Hello and welcome to the NBA Outlet presented by OTGBasketball.com. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Kory, Waldron, and two guests again today, Jack Manuell and Dylan Jackson. What's up, guys?
I'm doing good. I'm excited about free agency, kind of mad at DeMarcus Cousins, excited about Michael Carter-Williams. I'm ready to discuss it.
Shout out to all my fellow English football fans back in London. A little bit of a tidbit for them. Good to see them going through. Let's talk some hoops.
We are 66 hours into free agency, and it is everything we all expected.
I don't know if it's everything we expected. I don't know if I expected.
It's probably more, actually. Yeah, it's probably more than we expected.
It's crazier, and it's definitely still plenty to happen. We saw a couple things happen today. Before we get started, though, just a quick reminder, you can check out the outlet on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, and Google Play. But, guys, we're just going to run through some of the free agent signings. Just give me your take on them, and we'll talk a little bit of trades and rumors at the end. First off, we'll start off with the Jazz. Dante Exum re-signed 3 years, $33 million. Also re-signed Raul Neto, 2 years, $4.4 million. Thoughts on this one?
I think Dante Exum it's kind of a risk. 3 years, $33 million. It's a lot for a guy who hasn't played much for the Jazz, but he's still 22. He's got a lot of potential, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So I think if you're going to try to pair somebody with Donovan Mitchell, I think it could be very, very well for the Jazz. But at the same time, you just drafted Grayson Allen, so I'm not sure how you plan to use all these guards that you have. I think it's an interesting move.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting move as well. I can't speak too badly about my fellow Aussie brethren. I would get in some serious trouble as I have in the past. But yeah, I don't mind it. I mean, I'm really happy for Dante for all the hardships that he's been through with the injuries to get rewarded. I think that this was almost a pay good deal from Dennis Lindsay. And also, a nice sort of like little tidbit is the fact that, another point guard off the market for teams like Phoenix and Orlando. So I'm happy to see this get rewarded for Dante Exum. But again, at the same time, it'll be interesting to see if there are any like player or team options along the way, how much money of that is guaranteed, which I'm sure will trickle out in the coming days and hours.
Yeah, over on Full Access Hoops, I actually did the Utah Jazz season recap before free agency, and I had on Taylor Griffin to talk Jazz, and he was saying how despite the injury to Dante Exum, Jazz fans and the organization is just really high on him still. They see explosiveness. Against Houston, he showed glimpses of still having, the potential of being something really special. So I wasn't surprised that they brought him back. $33 million over 3 years to me, it is a little bit odd for a guy who hasn't really shown much. But, he has shown a lot of raw potential. If he can just stay healthy, he could be the point guard going forward, because he has more offensive versatility, I think, than Ricky Rubio, even though Ricky Rubio was tremendous last season.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a risk, but it feels like Utah's just betting on him and his potential. Any thoughts on Raul Neto signing?
I think it's a nice little move. The fact that the Utah was sort of known for having these sort of low-key moves last year, having guys like Royce O'Neal, Jay Crowder on these really sort of team-friendly deals. And the way you can sort of building a roster, Dennis Lindsay's underrated in the way that he's doing that. And, adding that depth to your list, to your roster, is going to bode well for them, who I'm guessing they're going to be aiming for a top 3, top 4 seed next year. And all these moves are sort of, hopefully paving the way to do so.
Anything else from you guys?
I think that Jack covered it pretty well. Raul Neto, he's going to be that standard backup center. They re-signed Derek Favors a day ago, so I don't think there's too much to think behind that. I mean, it's 2 years, I believe, like $4.5 million. So he's that quality backup center. Good deal for them.
Yeah, just a guy to have around, not bad. A nice backup in case somebody has an injury like an Exum or Ricky Rubio. Moving on to Avery Bradley, he re-signed with the Clippers, 2 years, $25 million. What are your thoughts on this one?
This is a very, very interesting signing. I didn't expect him to go back to the Clippers, but he inevitably did. 2 years, $25 million. I believe that second year is a team option, or at least it's partially guaranteed. He's that defensive 3-and-D type of guy for the Clippers. They have a lot of guards now with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jerome Robinson, Patrick Beverley, all these different types of guys. But I really do like this fit here in Los Angeles. I think it's interesting because I mean, I thought he would go somewhere else and get maybe a little bit of a smaller 1 year type prove it deal. But I think this is a great deal for the Clippers if it's only going to be for 1 year anyway. So I like it for both sides.
Yeah, the fact that I think it's only like Zach Lowe reported, I think it's only like $1 million guaranteed after the first year. So it's like $14 million in guaranteed money. via the Clippers. So, yeah, good move, I think, in terms of that sort of one-year deal. When you compare it to, say, a guy like a KCP who's on a one-year sort of $12 million deal with the Lakers, I think Avery Bradley, we've mentioned, I know Nick has plenty of times about his off-court troubles, but, when at his best, we've seen him, defend guys like Kyrie Irving and be one of the best sort of guard defenders in the league. If he can get anywhere close back to that form, then, this will be a worthwhile move for the Los Angeles Clippers. And, in a tightened market, to get anywhere above sort of $10 million is a win for him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would have paid Avery Bradley this much, only because of how bad he was. He just wasn't good last year. His shooting numbers were down. He was banged up, like you just said. The off the court issues. I mean, there was just a lot of bad around Avery Bradley his first year out of Boston. But of course, the Clippers who are rebuilding, you can take a chance on a guy like him. Who knows? Maybe he starts off this year really hot. He stays healthy, and maybe a team, someone contending. They come knocking at the deadline for a guy who's making $12.5 million, and they try and scoop him up. But I like it for the Clippers. It makes sense.
Yeah, and the fact that the second year is not fully guaranteed makes him a nice trade asset because you can trade him and then you can get his cap off the books for the following season. And they're just going to have a really annoying defensive backcourt. In terms of Patrick Beverley and Avery Bradley, that's not going to be fun to go against. But like Dylan mentioned, or Kory mentioned, I was a little bit surprised to see him get a 2-year deal. I thought he would get the 1-year deal, kind of prove it, and then look to get more money next year. Going on to Seth Curry, though, he signed with the Portland Trail Blazers, 2 years, $5.6 million.
I was hoping that he would go to an Eastern Conference team, maybe like the Celtics, give him another scoring punch, just so he could face the Warriors in the finals. That's all I wanted this free agency. I didn't care about anything else. I just wanted Seth Curry on the Celtics. But I do like this signing. He's that 1-2 kind of combo guard, that scoring punch, like I mentioned earlier. But I like this deal for the Trailblazers. I think it's 2 years, I believe. So I like this. Gives them another guard instead of Shabazz Napier, who I assume is out the door. So I like this deal a lot.
Yeah, I like it too. I think it's a nice value deal for the Trailblazers. They've been making some questionable moves in the offseason in terms of renouncing the rights to Shabazz Napier, letting Ed Davis sort of walk out the door for bugger all money to be fair. So yeah, to make a decent move, this eases the pressure on Neil O'Shea somewhat. The lineups last year with Shabazz Napier, along with their 2 star guards, worked really well. So I'd expect to see a little bit of that with Seth Curry. And, he can ease a lot of Damian Lillard a little bit. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this works out. But, Seth Curry has a lot to – Seth Curry, Freudian slip, has a lot to prove this year. So hopefully he does well. And, we know all his talent and hopefully he can prove it.
Yeah, 2 years with a player option for the second year, which I'm sure he likes because, coming off a season where he didn't play because of the stress fracture in his leg. Now, if he has a really good year, he can opt out and get more money possibly. I think he's an upgrade from Shabazz Napier if he's healthy. I like him as the 6th man off that bench. He can do a little bit of playmaking. As we know, he can shoot. Not as good as his brother, but he can still shoot. It's a low risk, high reward, I think, in this situation.
Were you guys surprised Seth Curry didn't get a little bit more attention in free agency?
I'm not too surprised. If you miss a full year of basketball, it's just bound to happen that way.
Yeah, we saw the same sort of thing with reportedly from DeMarcus Cousins barely getting any offers, if not none, basically, apart from like Boston and Portland in a trade. So for a guy like Seth Curry who missed all of the season, and on stress fractures as well, which is a lingering type of injury, not necessarily 100% surprised. There's elements I'm like, well, why didn't this team go for him? Why didn't the Lakers go for him? We've talked to ad nauseum about the fact that they need shooting like more than anything. So yeah, it's surprising that some teams haven't valued him in terms of their needs, but it feels like a lot of the time that we're better GMs than some of these teams going around.
Moving on to Dwight Howard, he finalized his buyout with the Nets. We don't know the exact number yet, and now he's signing with the Washington Wizards. 1 year, $5 million and change. What are your thoughts on this one?
Their locker room is going to be an absolute mess. John Wall, Bradley Beal, Otto Porter, and now Dwight Howard. My God, it's going to be so fun to watch them. But at the same time, you can't help but cringe. Basketball-wise, Dwight Howard, he's a double-double machine, defensive rebounder. He's an upgrade from Marcin Gortat, so that's all I can say about him.
Yeah, funnily enough, I mentioned this on JBT a couple of days ago in saying that, Dwight Howard is a better fit in terms of over DeMarcus Cousins due to the fact that they'll be able to get him cheaper and not in a sign and trade. But the fact that DeMarcus Cousins was signed for the mid-level exception, which is essentially the exact same deal for what Dwight Howard will reportedly be going for, doesn't make a lot of sense to me, especially with the connection that DeMarcus and John Wall have back in their college days. So obviously, the front office of the Wizards is one that we pan and consistently and with good reason. But Dwight Howard fills the need. I guess you don't want Jan Mahimi playing starters minutes, and Dwight Howard can do that. And Dylan saw that for his team in Charlotte, despite the fact that he's a locker room cancer. He can still put up numbers. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be there'll be plenty of memes and plenty of fun and plenty of content for Wizards fans.
I love the point of the fact that, Dwight Howard and, Cousins are both making the same money. Maybe the Wizards didn't call because they thought they didn't have a chance. And this would then make, the point proven that you always shoot your shot. You always make the call and you just, see, just, hey, what are you thinking, Cousins? Because, if they're both making the same money, and like you mentioned, John Wall and him have talked about wanting to play together. That could have been something. But, and as Dylan, you both mentioned, Dwight Howard in that locker room with the already somewhat turbulent relationship between Wall and Bradley Beal, it could be really bad. But on the floor, I think this could be really good. I mean, if these guys play up to their potential, John Wall stays healthy, even though Dwight Howard, doesn't really get utilized in the pick and roll all that time, like all that great. Like he doesn't actually like the pick and roll or whatever, if I remember correctly, from his Houston days. But this team could be really good in the East, especially with all the moves happening. This could be a top 4, top 3 seed possibly in the East, if everything gels. So I don't hate the move from a basketball standpoint. But after the team issues they had last year, this could be a bad move. But Dwight Howard, like Dylan mentioned, double machine. He can still rim protect. So from that aspect, I do like it, especially for $5.4 million.
Yeah, given their cap situation, adding this talent is definitely great. But like you guys mentioned, the locker room is definitely something to keep an eye on. They also signed Jeff Green today, 1 year, $2.5 million. Thoughts on this one?
I mean, it's they lost Mike Scott, so I'm guessing they're probably going to want that sort of role from Jeff Green. Jeff Green had his moments throughout the Cavaliers season, including a nice game in the playoffs against his former team, the Boston Celtics. I think Jeff Green gets unfairly panned quite a bit. Obviously we see the potential in him, but at the same time, for what he's getting paid for this deal, I think it's a nice enough move for the Washington Wizards, and I think he can give them something going off the bench.
Every time you expect him to have a good game, he doesn't. And every time you don't expect him to have a good game, he does. And that's just what not George Hill. Why do I say George Hill?
Hey, same guy.
George Hill is like
pretty much the same guy. Trust me, I've watched him.
Jeff Green, not George Hill. I don't know. But George, I keep wanting to say it. But Jeff Green, he's going to be that rotational forward for the Wizards.
I'm a big fan of this move. Oddly enough, Jeff Green did have his best true shooting percentage last year at 58.7%. Take that with a grain of salt.
Take that for data.
But I think, even as a 6th man or a 7th man off the bench, playing with Austin Rivers, that bench unit is possibly better on paper than it has been in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
It's just depending on the fit. And he's going to get a lot of dish outs from John Wall. He is next to a really good shooter in Bradley Beal. I don't hate this move. It's just like you guys mentioned, Jeff Green is hot and cold. I mean, he was great in Game 6 and Game 7 of that Celtics series. And then against the Warriors, he was absolutely terrified. So, I mean, it is the Warriors. So I guess that, that's not fair to say. But I'm okay with the move, especially for the money it's at.
Kory kind of hinted at it. Obviously, this bench is a lot better, and Dwight Howard gives them some more talent. Where do you see the Wizards in the East? Obviously, this is super early, but do you think they could end up being a top 4 seed?
Yeah, I'm going to be really interested to see when Kory and I and everyone at OTGs come out with our power rankings, how our staff go with it, because, this is a move that I'm going to be fretting over. Obviously, the moves in free agency indicate sort of like, they're making some okay moves. And with the fact that LeBron has left the East, it leaves that sort of third spot wide open. We sort of, I'm guessing the consensus will be Boston and Philly will be jockeying for that 1 and 2 position. But that third position could be up for grabs from anyone. The Wizards, the Raptors, who knows who else? The Bucks might get it all together. I don't. There's a team that a fellow podcaster goes for that signed Tyreke Evans. I can't remember who they are, but who knows? I think the Wizards have a decent shot.
Yeah, I think the Wizards definitely. If things on paper work out with the talent on this roster now, after me and Nick were really hard on Gortat this year. I mean, we roasted him on a lot of podcasts. The Polish hammer was like a Polish, one of those playset hammers. I think if this thing comes together and this team stays healthy, they could easily be a home court team in the playoffs in the East.
Yeah, I think they're going to be probably like a 4 or 5 seed. I think the Pacers will be third.
Thank you.
The Sixers and Celtics may flip-flop at 1 and 2. So I think it'll be interesting to see, but inevitably that locker room, it just hurts my head.
Yeah, it feels like they need to sign like an old veteran to just kind of get in there and kind of settle things down, but we'll see what happens. And Kory kind of hinted at this. Tyreke Evans to the Pacers, 1 year, $12 million. We heard this rumor yesterday. We couldn't confirm it, but now it's confirmed. Thoughts on this signing?
I love this signing. He can run the point guard. He can play forward. He's that scoring punch. He led the Grizzlies in scoring, believe it or not. I know they were horrible, but at the same time, take it with a grain of salt. So Tyreke Evans, he can come in. He can be that scoring guy. I like this signing for the Pacers. I don't know if they brought Darren Collison back or not, but if not, he can play the backup point guard again. So I really like this signing for the Pacers. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm going to give my boy Kory some extra time to talk about it because, he's had enough time complaining about Doug McDermott. So let's give him some extra time to give him some love to Tyreke Evans.
No longer Salt Bay over there.
No, I can close up my wounds.
The palate has been cleansed.
Yeah, as Dylan mentioned, Tyreke Evans was the leading scorer for the Grizzlies last year, and not only that, but he was efficient. That was the big difference, is the fact that he was able to hit threes consistently. He averaged 5 rebounds and 5 assists. So you like all of that. The versatility he'll give the Pacers is going to be crucial. The issue last year was the fact that without Victor Oladipo on the floor, your second best playmaker was Lance Stevenson, and with Lance Stevenson, you were flipping a coin of what kind of Lance you were going to get every night. And obviously he came off the bench. With Tyreke Evans, you can give him, 30 minutes a game. Unlike Lance, you can only give 22. Tyreke can also take over an offense a little bit. Can give Victor Oladipo some more off-ball times. He doesn't have to do as much with the offense. I just think it's just good because it lets Victor Oladipo kind of, not have to deal with the nightly pressure of being literally the best and offensive vocal point and the playmaker who has to do everything for the Pacers, who, keep in mind, they lost every game when he didn't play last season. So I think Tyreke Evans is great, and obviously it's a 1-year deal, $12 million, which is to me perfect. He deserves that money. I was surprised he didn't get moved last year at the deadline with only a $3 million contract. The Pacers were interested actually last at the deadline as well, and finally they got their guy. So I think it's good, and I think depending on whether he starts or comes off the bench, he's going to have a huge impact on Indiana this year.
Yeah, it could turn out to be a really nice signing for the Pacers. Now, do you guys think the Pacers are going to kind of surprise everyone this year? Not to the same way and sneak into the playoffs and end up being a higher seed, but do you think they could surprise teams in terms of being a high seed and winning in the playoffs and moving forward?
I think they could definitely make the second round of the playoffs. Now, whether they get past the Celtics or the Philadelphia 76ers, I think that's a whole nother question. But I think they're almost a lock to make the semifinals.
Yeah, I think they've got some nice depth now, adding in Tyreke Evans. Eases the load off Victor Oladipo, who had to do so much on both ends of the floor. Kory's mentioned, so many times about how good he is when it comes to his stealing numbers as well. So this sort of eases that offensive load. And, if there are times where, you can just give the ball to Tyreke Evans, let him do his thing. He averaged 19, 5, and 5 last year. So I think it works out really well for the Pacers. And, I mentioned the fact that the Wizards could be challenging for that third seed. But, yeah, the Pacers have every right to believe that they should be there as well.
66 straight games last year, Victor Oladipo had at least 1 steal recorded.
Bang.
Just saying.
Come on, the stats, Kory. I love it, mate.
Hey, I only know 3, all right? I'm not here all day. I think I think the Pacers aren't going to surprise teams as much as they did last year. As you mentioned, Nick, last year, I mean, Humi projected 32 wins, and I was glad to be wrong. And I think if they make it, they can definitely make it past the first round. I think, we almost beat Cleveland last year. It was LeBron versus the Pacers, pretty much basically that's what it was, 1-5. And then I think, this year, what you're looking at, if they want to compete and actually advance further, Miles Turner and Domas Sabonis, those two guys have to take major leaps. In particular, Miles Turner, he got better this year, but not by leaps and bounds. He needs to, not get in foul trouble as much. He needs to be stronger when getting rebounds. Need to not hesitate when you have a wide open damn jump shot. And I mean, if that guy progresses, then yeah, this Pacers team with Tyreke Evans and Victor Oladipo could be, a third best team that challenges, at least gives the Celtics and the Sixers a run for their money. I don't think they're good enough to beat them, but they may be able to throw, 1 or 2 games against them in the semis.
Yeah, the East is definitely going to be a lot more fun this year because LeBron's not in it, and it always felt like LeBron was a lock every year to go to the finals. There's a little bit more unknown. But moving on to the Rockets, they signed Dylan's boy, Michael Carter-Williams, to a 1-year deal, veteran minimum. Thoughts on this one?
I love this so much. He is my favorite player in the world, without a doubt. He's going to be that backup point guard for them. They didn't really have it last year when they brought in Chris Paul, when they traded Patrick Beverley. So if they bring him in, he's going to be that rotational guy. He's not going to have an offensive game whatsoever. But defensively, he's going to be versatile. He's going to switch on to 2 threes. So I think if you're looking to bring that in, that defensive rotational presence, he's going to be good. Now, offensive game, he's not going to do anything. Like I said, he missed a layup almost every single game, and that's not an exaggeration. He can't shoot. I believe he had the league worst field goal percentage, like above 100 attempts or something. So I think he shot like 29% from the field, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But this is my favorite signing in the NBA so far. I don't care about DeMarcus Cousins. I don't care about LeBron James. This is my favorite signing.
Am I being punked? Where's Ashton?
I love the shade is so real. I love it. I think that if the point guard whisperer Mike D'Antoni can do something with Michael Carter-Williams, then he is an absolute savant. I don't see it happening, but I think Michael Carter-Williams, if he can provide a need and sort of D'Antoni can narrow his focus to being that pure defensive guard, sort of like a light Marcus Smart, where he doesn't have to do everything as a floor general and can just be a defensive sort of presence, because, the Rockets have enough offensive presence already as it is. So if they can narrow his focus in that sense, then, I feel like that there can be an okay signing. They need to add some pieces to sort of keep up with the Golden State Warriors, but, I don't think there's enough pieces in the world that can allow them to do that. But, Michael Carter-Williams, see you later, I guess, from Dylan Jackson, XOXO.
XOXO.
Trash. I mean, you have to give money to somebody, I guess. I understand from a defensive standpoint, this team needed, to kind of replace Trevor Ariza's offense, which they haven't done. I think Michael Carter-Williams can be decent. I mean, he does play defense. He can play, make a little, as Dylan said, he misses almost every layup he takes. I think it's okay, I guess. I don't know. I doubt he ever plays in the playoffs. I mean, they play a 7-man rotation as is, and Michael Carter-Williams would not be one of them. But, yeah, sure. We can enjoy this for the, 62 games we see him in the regular season for about 15 minutes.
This is a guy I watched game in and game out until about 10 games left into the regular season play over guys like Malik Monk and Dwayne Bacon. So I am happy, very happy he is out of Charlotte right now.
I don't blame you. Moving on, we did have one trade today. Wilson Chandler is going to the Sixers along with a future second-round pick. Obviously, this is more of a salary cap dump for the Denver Nuggets. But the Sixers, Wilson Chandler still has a little bit of game. He did have a really bad season last year. What are your thoughts on this trade?
Yeah, I don't mind if it's both sides. Yeah. Sorry, Dylan, you go.
I'm not sure what Philly got, but I think the 76ers got a second-round pick with Chandler. if I'm correct. So I like this trade from both point of views. Denver saved about $50 million total with this trade, just because of all the salary stuff involved, like over the luxury tax. And Philly just had the cap room to absorb him, so they get an extra pick. I assume they're either going to waive him or just let him expire, maybe move him again. So I like this trade from both perspectives.
Yeah, I don't mind it either. I think that, it adds some wing depth to the Philadelphia 76ers, which they sort of need, only having really Robert Covington in that position, a guy who can provide some decent enough offense as well. And yeah, for the Nuggets, they still need to shed even more salary to get into that luxury tax range to sort of, make sure, because no team wants to be in the luxury tax if they're not a top 2, top 3 contender. And the Nuggets right now, as their current iteration, aren't that. So look for them to make some more moves going forward, whether that's Kenneth Faried, Darrell Arthur, trying to get rid of their salaries. I'm sure it'll be a little bit trickier than just dumping Wilson Chandler, who, I feel like will be a nice asset for the Philadelphia 76ers.
For Denver, I think this is perfect because you shred, like you guys mentioned, you shed the first contract you need to shed. Kenneth Faried, I think, is going to be a guy we see fall within the next, 4 or 5 days, most likely. For the Sixers' point of view, I feel like this is them giving up on Kawhi Leonard personally. I feel like this is them saying, we're probably not going to be able to get him for the asking price. Or maybe I'm wrong. And this is, just the start of something bigger. But I think for the Sixers standpoint, it's not bad. I mean, Wilson Chandler obviously offensively had a down year, but he can still, he still plays relatively good defense. He can play the 4, he can play the 3, which gives him a little bit of versatility at those two positions. So I don't mind it. I think this is actually a pretty good move for the Sixers, especially when Wilson Chandler, again, isn't going to be a vocal point of any offense anyways.
Yeah, and the fact he's expiring gives him cap space for next year, so it keeps him flexible for the following season. When do you guys think we'll see Kenneth Faried moved? Obviously, they were able to keep their first-round pick for next year, so they could possibly attach that to him.
Look, there's a chance. I'd hate to jump in, Dylan, but being a Nets fan, I had to do it for my boy. The Nets currently have about $6 million in cap room. Depending on if Dwight gives up, about $8 million, that gives us basically $14 million, which is about Kenneth Faried's contract. So, and we were rumored before the draft, so there's certainly a chance there. Obviously, adding Ed Davis changes that, and Atlanta, Sacramento, Chicago are the other teams who have that cap flexibility. So there aren't sort of many trading partners that they're going to have to sort of dump those contracts. But this could take weeks. It could extend all the way into August or the end of July. But it's going to happen, and I think for the Nuggets' sake, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's going to happen. They tried moving their 14th overall pick, but they ended up selecting Michael Porter, another forward. So I think it's going to happen. It's just only a matter of time, maybe within the month. But with these types of trades, you just never know.
Yeah, I mean, I just think within the next, I think he gets dealt before free agency ends personally, but I could be wrong. It could be a deadline deal for all I know. But I know that I just don't see him in Denver much longer. I think if he makes it past January, the come of 2019, I'll be surprised. It's just you don't want to, like Jack mentioned earlier, you don't want to pay the luxury tax when you're not even contending for a title.
Yeah, it's definitely been, it felt like they've been trying to move Faried for almost 2 or 3 years now. But moving on to another rumor that dropped today, Kyrie Irving and Jimmy Butler are still trying to figure out a way to play together, according to a source. As well, Jimmy Butler has been kind of angry with the Timberwolves and some of their younger players not trying hard enough, and he doesn't look like he wants to sign an extension with them. What are your thoughts on this, guys?
Well, if it's true, then the Timberwolves got robbed. I mean... They give up Chris Dunn, Lauri Markkanen, and Zach LaVine for this guy who had a 2-year contract. Last year was the first. This year he's expiring. So if he leaves, you're still in the negative cap room, I believe. So you are struggling to find any way you can keep Jimmy Butler if you can without moving Karl Anthony Towns, even that is the guy that he was rumored to be butting heads with.
Yeah, I think we'll see Andrew Wiggins will be a ready-made replacement. No, I don't see that. I don't see that happening. But yeah, the fact that this is coming out, we know the rumors around Jimmy Butler and Kyrie Irving have been long-standing, as Nick and I have mentioned on the buzz. So I'm all in for 2019, 2020. You're getting Kyrie and Jimmy to Brooklyn. We know But also at the same time, we could see, Karl Anthony Towns possibly traded out, or Andrew Wiggins, and the Timberwolves getting Kyrie Irving, because for those that might not remember, I'm sure plenty of people do, the Minnesota Timberwolves were on Kyrie's original list of teams back when he wanted to get out of Cleveland. Obviously, Jimmy Butler might have had an effect in that. So look for them to sort of be teaming up, as Nick mentioned.
This was interesting because obviously I was at work all day. My phone was dead, so I didn't see any of this nonsense until about 5:55. And we hopped on this podcast at 6:05. So this was a lot to process quickly. I guess we can all be surprised that Jimmy Butler's fed up with playing with young guys who don't play defense when he obviously plays defense. And not just that, he's surrounded by, Wiggins, Teague, and Towns. None of those guys are defensively talented to begin with. So him not wanting to sign an extension to me is not surprising, especially when Tom Thibodeau runs him in the dirt the first year. He tears his meniscus. So I'm sure it's a collaboration of these things. And, of course, if, you're really good friends with Kyrie Irving and he also wants to play with you and you're also both looking at free agency in the next year, this is what the league does. We pair up with friends and superstars now, which is not a bad thing. It's enjoyable for the most part. But yeah, I think if this is if this is how he feels and he's not going to be able to be pleased, who knows? We might see Jimmy Butler dealt before the season ends. I don't think that's likely, but it doesn't look good for Minnesota when you, like Dylan mentioned, they went all in. They traded away Zach LaVine, Chris Dunn for Jimmy Butler, and now they may lose him for next to nothing if he decides to not re-sign and leave. I don't think they should take the risk of trading Karl Anthony Towns if Jimmy Butler doesn't like Towns, because at the end of the day, Towns is still younger, and I'd rather you keep the youth than keep a guy who's near the peak of his career. And I mean, what are you playing for at this point in time with a guy who's in his peak compared to a guy like Towns who you can still build around and possibly outlive this Warriors dynasty? And then when Towns is in his peak, maybe you have your chance at your run for a title. The fingers crossed, I guess, if you're in Minnesota. But surprising stuff.
Where are some destinations that you think Kyrie Irving and Jimmy Butler could kind of team up?
Los Angeles. And I say that because that's such a popular thing to say now. Like the Lakers, they're back. They've got LeBron. But wouldn't it be something to have Kyrie Irving go back to LeBron with Jimmy Butler? That'd be insane.
He did say that, I think there's still a little bit of love there, despite the fact that Kyrie, sort of left, I guess, on his own accord to establish his own sort of, future, his own sort of narrative, his own sort of career trajectory. He did mention the fact that he thought LeBron was the MVP this year, the best player in the game, sorry. I think I did actually a piece for Clutch Points where I did 29 possible trade deals for Kyrie Irving, obviously, when that rumor was going around. And my number one team was the San Antonio Spurs for Kyrie, obviously with Kawhi, where his status right now. And again, on his original list of teams. I wouldn't put it past, Greg Popovich making a deal of some sorts there. Obviously, they did draft Lonnie Walker as well. They've got DeJounte Murray. But, if you've got a chance of getting Kyrie Irving and Jimmy Butler, there's certainly a chance that I'll bring up the San Antonio Spurs. The Miami Heat could be a chance. Never put it past Pat Riley to find a star. They've got a lot of assets that they could probably offer up. Nothing that's going to blow the Timberwolves out of the park or the Celtics out of the park. But, the fact that, both will be unrestricted free agents at the same time, wouldn't put it past someone like Pat Riley as well.
The San Antonio destination, what if destination's interesting. And Kyrie definitely still does have a great deal of respect for LeBron. I was listening to the Ben Simmons podcast recently. He had Kyrie Irving on, and Kyrie spoke about, how playing LeBron was something, he was, so glad he could do. And, they obviously had a ton of memories together and whatnot. I think personally, and I hate to say this to you guys, because I know there's two people in here who might, come to my house with pitchforks and torches.
You better not say the Knicks. You have better.
Then I just think the Knicks are a possibility. Kyrie Irving has mentioned his desire to play in the Big Apple. Obviously Brooklyn isn't New York City, so it could be Brooklyn, but he's mentioned the Knicks in particular, or at least that's what he's been paired to. And who knows, Porzingis, Kyrie Irving, Jimmy Butler. I mean, obviously they would have to make moves, maybe a sign and trade. That's in Tim Hardaway Jr.
Joakim Noah.
Right, Joakim Noah, then probably a sign and trade with Tim Hardaway Jr. to make money right. but who knows? I wouldn't say it's out of the realm of possibilities that they team up somewheres, and one of the two New York teams. Those are two likely destinations. Maybe the Clippers if they free up some cap space. There's some possibilities. I just don't. I don't personally think Kyrie will go back to LeBron, but that's just me thinking that there's more to the pettiness and everything else.
I think if the Nuggets can somehow find a way to clear the cap space, pairing Nikola Jokic and Paul Millsap with Jimmy Butler and Kyrie Irving would be such a fun team. I don't know how they would do it.
Yeah, I don't know
how they would get the money, but it would be so fun.
Well, if Jay Christensen has his way, there will be no salary cap. So maybe it's just that's what happens in the next year. They get rid of the salary cap, and we just go at these guys with these monster teams, and then like 10 really bad teams.
I think the salary cap will be here for a long time. I doubt it goes away, but you never know. Crazier things have happened, like DeMarcus Cousins signing with the Warriors. But that wraps it up for go
sorry,
ahead,
Nick. Just speaking of DeMarcus Cousins, I just saw on Twitter. I'm not sure how true this is, but going around, league sources say that Cousins rebuffed New Orleans' offer of a 2-year, $40 million contract before the season ended. When that offer was declined, New Orleans took it off the table, apparently. I'm not sure how true that is, but the fact that apparently there was rumors going around that New Orleans didn't make an offer. Maybe they did make an offer earlier in the season, and they that offer was still on the table, and they took it off possibly. But that to me is quite interesting.
That might mean that the medicals are a lot more scary than we think they are.
Yeah,
kind of like the Isaiah Thomas thing.
I saw someone mention that on Twitter, that this could just be another Isaiah Thomas situation where he just won't be right at all during the season. I mean, to be honest, it's not like the Warriors really need him to be 100% anyways, or even 50% because they can win without him, but it is something to keep an eye on. But any other rumors or notes or signings that you guys want to mention before we get out of here?
I mean, the only other thing I see is that David Nwambe and the Bulls are reportedly open to doing a sign and trade. So come on, everybody, let's get on out there.
Bang.
Yeah, and also, if the Hornets could please trade Kemba Walker before he walks for absolutely nothing, that would be outstanding. Maybe Lonzo Ball, maybe.
I mean, we mentioned it. Yep. Yeah. What else do you think would be a possibility other than the Lakers for Kemba? You think Orlando possibly?
Orlando's definitely a possibility. You got Steve Clifford down there. Pair him with Nikola Vucevic. That would be super fun. I think Miami's an underrated destination. They've already got Goran Dragic, but if they could maybe package him with maybe a future pick or something, I don't think Charlotte would maybe hang up the phone. San Antonio is another team. They've been looking for that point guard since Tony Parker, declined for a while. So if they could put something around Lonnie Walker, that might be intriguing. But all in all, I don't think he's going to be moved, and I will think he does walk for nothing.
Yeah, that always is the worst. And same thing could happen to Timberwolves with Jimmy Butler.